Hi guys, welcome to this basic Flexbox tutorial. I thought I'll show you some practical ideas of how I use Flexbox to create certain layouts and whatnot. It does include everything in Flexbox because some of it is either confusing or isn't that relevant to what I tend to do. So as you can see here, I've created this basic template with a parent container and 5 divs within. I've gone for 5 just because I thought it made things, there's certain things that I'll highlight further down that are quite useful to know. To go into here, create a bit of boilerplate code just so you can see the outline of each item, see where things go, and you can see down the sides here I've got these dotted lines showing you the edge of the container. So let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is get your container and make it display flex. And as you can see, by default they're all sort of left aligned, they're all width auto. Just quickly highlight that just by increasing the size of one of them so you can see. Okay, so you can see that's grown to contain its contents, but no bigger than that. So you've got 5 items. First thing I'm going to show you is justify content. And what this basically does is it tells you how you want them to be aligned horizontally. There are 3 types of justify content. So you've got space between. They're all pretty self-explanatory by what they're called. So as you can see, it's just the edge items are right up against the border, and then the space between them is just calculated evenly with the space that remains after the width of each item is calculated. So again, if I go in here and make one of them a bit bigger, you'll see that the space between shrinks and they're all still sort of that same, the width that they need to be for their contents. Okay, so let's bring that back to there. The next one we've got is space evenly, which again sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? So given the width of all the children within, it works out the remaining width and splits it evenly, including on the outside here, before the first item, after the 5th in this case. And all the space in there is exactly the same. Then you've got space around, which is the last one, which is the same as space evenly, except the first and last spacing is half the width of the ones in between each item. So it looks quite nice, and there are some contexts where that works really well. So for now we'll leave it as space around, and what I'm going to explain now is dealing with different widths. So there's 2 ways of sort of splitting things up within a row. If you think of it as in terms of, like say in Bootstrap where you've got 12 columns, in this one there's something that I sort of think of as a fluid column style. So say if you've got, say instead of having to fit to 12 columns and then a division of that, so say if you've got a random number of items and you want them to be even or whatnot, you can achieve that with Flexbox quite easily. So what you want to do here is you can define a flex property on each one. So the flex property on a child, if you say flex 1, it will basically say there's 5 items within the container and you want each one to take up 1/5 of that. So 1 divided by the total number. And if you look now, it takes up 1/5 again, and that determines the width of the children. Say if you're in a Bootstrap situation and you wanted 12 column width, you wanted the first 4, say, to take up 1 column, and then the last one to take up 8. So in that context, do 8, and that would be if you're working to a 12 grid system. But the good thing about this is what makes it a bit more fluid is you don't have to work to a 12 grid system. So in this context, it knows that there's 4 with flex 1 and it's 1 with flex 8. So it just literally works out the total is 12 columns. But you could say have 12 there. So that would be 4 items with 1 column each and 1 item with 12. So the total would be 16. So it knows to use a 16th of the width for each of these and a 12th of the width for the last one there. And then you could obviously do Say enter type. So the second one, you want that to take up 8, and it basically literally works out the total columns there. So in this case, it'd be 3 with 1, 3. What is that? 11. So 23 columns there. And as you can see, it's just calculated naturally for you. You don't have to be bothered to work that out. But it just makes it really good when you're looking at these sort of column layouts to have that flexibility. So that's one way of doing it. The other one is literally determining the width of items. So if we get rid of that there, the other way to do things is to say, right, so in this case, width kind of gets ignored. So if I get rid of that flex there, so if I say flex basis, which is the equivalent of width in this context, and say if I say 20%, obviously it's 5 items, so that will be full width. If I do 18%, it'll just be a little bit less than that, and then because we've got the space around going on here, you can see the margins on either side are half the width of all the ones in between. Flex basis 18. If you go above 20% in this situation, so 30%, it sticks to 20 because it knows that there's 5 items. You've obviously got 100% total. It won't go beyond that point. And that's just one way of determining the width of items. You can obviously do them individually and say, like I did earlier, so the 5th item, make that a bit larger than the rest. To say if so in this situation, flex space is 60, and you see that it's basically the equivalent. In this context, it's saying, okay, so you want that one to be twice the width of that, of all the others. So you want the first 4 to be 30%, but you want that to be 60%. And what it basically does is it kind of ignores the specific percentages and treats them relative to each other, given the total space and the total width of the items and whatnot, and the contents of them. So that's quite cool to know. So say if we've got 30% here, and we do actually want them to be 30%, and we want them to break onto a new line, as you can see, it's forcing us to be within one row at the moment. If you want to break them onto a new line, you can use the flex wrap property. Flex wrap, and as you see, it moves on to the next line. You've got this space around thing, so each individual row is calculated fresh, so it knows, okay, I want that to be half the width of this center section, but the same with the top row and bottom row. But obviously they work out different. So say if we say we want them to be 49%. So we've got that situation there. So as you can see, they're kind of taking up 49% now, and then you know that the space in between is calculated like that. So if you set that space between, you can see that it's left aligned. The reason why I put that 5th item in was to highlight that problem, really, that when you get the 5th one, when you get that first one, that odd item on the last row, because it's center aligned, it's a little bit tricky. So in that context, I don't actually know the solution. In the past, I've just made it flex start and then just put a bit of margin. If I actually want there to be a space down the side, I'll probably put padding on the parent. So you see there's padding there, then I'll literally do space between. There you go. And then that's pretty much that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else cool with Flexbox that works great. And there isn't. That's everything. There you go, guys. There's a little basic tutorial on some stuff. There's probably something I've forgotten. And if there is, I'll do another one of these annoying videos. Yay! See you soon.